Where are we?
Looks like the lesson.
Yeah.
This is not, looks like the lesson. This is actually art scroll.
We're doing the art. We're doing the Haggadah or something wrong?
We're doing Haggadah. We're doing Pesach, Haggadah, summing the whole thing up, the purpose of life, you name it. Okay, all in 1 hour or less. It's a crash course on the meaning of life. Okay. It's like the Rambam. The Rambam, he said basically he was writing the Mishnah Torah to bring an end to the need for any more svarim. Because people were in those days it was very hard to get it was scrolls, it was written by hand, and there wasn't printing press at that point in time, and Klal Yisrael was in the disaster. It was in the diaspora, which is a disaster, and they had to know the pasuk halacha, and not everybody even had gemaras in those days. Very, very rare, let alone have access to them, and he had to make it that people could function. So he said this sefer will paskin and end the need for the Sfarim, and as people, as Achronim have pointed out, or even Rishonim, that no Sefer has spawned more Sfarim than the Mishnah Torah in the end. It's almost like these are fighting words. It's like, you want to say anything like that? Like, pen your bed, ken your bed. That they, in case they will, multiply, dafka, Kosh Baruch Hu made it that the Jews in Mitzrayim would multiply. So it's like, you want to end all Sfarim, the Jewish people are the people of the book. You can't end the Sfarim, but you want to help them out, fantastic. But the Sefer basically has, because of the depth and the precision of the Mishnah Torah, basically has spawned a tremendous amount of commentaries. Probably the only thing rivaling that is a Haggadah. Pesach is so central to the Jewish people. The Haggadah, you just walk into a bookstore and see each year how many new Haggadahs come out. And some of them are old Haggadahs that were republished, that never were available in the past, or some were collected, or they're a likut of different points that were brought up by a certain meforish in different svarim. They put it together in one sefer and attached it to the proper places in Haggadah. But is a plethora, right, of material on the Haggadah itself. Each thing being explained, and I used to have a minhag basically of every year taking a new Haggadah and reading it 30 days before Pesach, and getting a different take on different mitzvahs of the Haggadah itself. And it's a great minhag to have, actually. Unfortunately, I sort of fell out of it, but especially when I started writing my own material based upon things I'd seen over the years. But just endless, absolutely endless. Ein sof kimat, and it makes sense because this is the birthday of the Jewish people, so to speak, and as much as we're freed. And everything that we're supposed to be is wrapped up in the whole concept of the Haggadah. Yet it's an amazing thing. As much as that's the case, how much we don't really focus on what's really supposed to happen, what's really going on. Right? It's almost like we're focusing, the focus on the details, the small picture, meaning that everything that is the Haggadah is broken up into different sections. So every section is explained vis-a-vis itself, and not so much the big picture. What's supposed to, so if you had to accumulate all the information, synthesize it, and put it into like a sikum, a very short paragraph of what we are trying to achieve. What is the essence of Cheres? Because here we are, 3,320 some odd years later, we're still making a Seder, we're still in Galus, we haven't solved the puzzle, we haven't, rectified the problem and, changed the situation. If anything, we've gone further away. Amazingly, so many Jews still make Leil Seder, even though a lot of times it's just a family meal. But nonetheless, the Seder is the reason for everyone to get together. There's some kind of connection. People do somewhat of the Seder, whether they believe it or not. That's another also amazing thing is how we sit down to make the Seder and celebrate an event that most of the world thinks is fictitious. They don't believe in it, including many Jews today. But they read the Haggadah anyhow. They go through it. So, we haven't really got very far in terms of trying to solve the riddle, solve the mystery, and one of the problems, as we saw before, was because people think that the Haggadah, the Seder is basically a straight celebration. And as the lesson pointed out, the very fact that we eat matzah on the Seder, not because there wasn't enough time to bake bread, but as we said before, that Kosh Baruch Hu made it that there wasn't enough time to bake bread, so we make sure that we'd have matzah. Avram Avinu, as the Brisker Rebbe points out, ate matzah leil Seder. The machlokus in the Medrash that existed between Cain and Hevel was over Korban Pesach. That was the sacrifice that they were supposed to have, be bringing at that point in time. So Adam knew he had some kind of Masara. He had a chush that Leil Seder, the 15th of Nisan, it's a very chashuv time of year for cherus. And so obviously these things are built into the bria, and the chagim are like windows, or doors. When you're walking around a dark room trying to get out. There's no electricity, there's no chashmal. You can't see where the door is, so you just feel your way around, right? Eventually, you get to an opening in the wall. There's no wall there. You assume that's an opening, and you walk down that opening until you get the light. Likewise, all year round, we're always trying to get the cheres. We'd like it always to be zman cheres seder, but we can't. It's just not the opportunity. Just like Yom Kippur is a time for tshuva, Rosh Hashanah is a time for tshuva and Kippurah. It's a very opportune time, as the Rambam points out. If you don't do it then, chances are you won't do it the rest of the year, because the amount of siyata d'shmaya you need to be able to successfully do tshuva and Kippurah is great. And you don't have that kind of siyata d'shmaya the rest of the year. You have it specifically during the 30 days of Elul, and then through the Seres Tshuva, the 10 days of repentance. That's what Kosh Baruch Hu makes it literally. Elul is an anila dodi v'dodi li. Kosh Baruch Hu goes of his way kivayochol to make it that we should be able to do tshuva if we want to. So it's a very propitious time. Likewise, when it comes to cherus, freedom, so we want to be free people all year round. But this is the time that Kosh Baruch Hu makes it possible, makes it easy to be able to achieve it. But you can't do it if you're not going to be aware of what the window actually is, what the opportunity actually is. And as a result of that, Leil Seder, the Haggadah, basically becomes just an event. It just becomes a celebration, a thing to do, get together, fulfill it. And also the emphasis on the halacha is to make sure you're doing exactly what it's supposed to be done, to be the mitzvah of arbakosos and chilas matzah, and all the machlokas that exist around that.
At the right time.
Exactly, all these different things, and it's like you get distracted away from the main event. And the amazing thing that people don't realize is that that's Amalek too. It's Amalek too. Amalek will do whatever he can to keep us from going free. That's clear. His number one device is distraction, and he doesn't care whether it's a from distraction, if it's a secular distraction. Doesn't make it. Whatever gets you, whatever gets your attention, pulls you away. As we said, the Gemara brings down by David Melech, right? The Malach HaMavis was supposed to take his life at the age of 70. His time was up. But as long as he was learning Torah, he couldn't take it. He couldn't get his neshama because he was also big Torah. There's a shmirah. Malach HaMavis had no shlita over him. So what did he do instead? He basically made a distraction by making the leaves rustle in the tree, and that caught David Melech's attention, and he went to check it out, and he climbed the ladder. As he was climbing the ladder, he was frail. So he fell down and died, right? But it's a distraction. Distractions are what kill us. And I think today we could, with confidence, say this is the most distracting society mankind has ever known, except for wars. Obviously, wars. Obviously, wars are more distracting. You have, living in bunkers and having to worry about missiles falling, a lack of food. That's a very distracting. But in terms of peacetime, this is the most probably distracting society mankind has ever had to deal with. I mean, just. There's been never, during wars, obviously, in your davening in a minyan, you're always afraid that a missile might come and the sirens go off and that's going to distract you for sure. But during peacetime, we've never had such distractions like cell phones going off in Shemona Esrei, and they go by, somehow they know exactly when they go off, just as the Chazan is doing Kedusha, right? Or, and it's distracting, and you can lose your focus just like that, and changes the whole world. Person can be ready to make a bracha, Magen Avraham, right? And you have to be mechapim for that bracha for the whole Shemona Esrei, right? And this happened to me. The cell phone goes off, and it catches your attention, and the words come out anyhow, because it's automatic. I just said Magen Avraham, and I was focused on his cell phone, right? And all of a sudden, you have a halachic issue just like that. Do I go back to the beginning? Do I start all over again? Do I have to continue? That's Amalek, right? So Amalek knows what gets to us. He can also use halacha too to distract us, because if the goal is to learn the halacha, then obviously he's not going to distract you with halacha. He's going to distract you with somebody knocking at the front door, the phone going off, or getting hungry, whatever the case may be. If the issue is something else, for example, cherus by the seder, so then he can use halacha, and he can use the exactitude of doing things exactly right, or trying to shut up as many divrei Torah as you can at the same to make it meaningful, at the same time losing sight of the big picture. So what is the big picture? You got to sum it up. What is the big picture of Leil Seder? So there's a pasuk, right, that we say every single day as part of Pesukah Zimrei, and it comes from, comes from 12, right? Thank you. Where's the art scroll? It comes from, where did it come from? Tehillim, Self from Tehillim, okay? The pasuk reads the following way. It says, Anoichi Hashem Lokecha, Hamalacha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Harchet Picha V'molehu. Right? Because Baruch Hu tells you this pasuk that we say every single day in Tehillim exactly what he was doing and why he did it. I am God, your God. Right? Anoichi Hashem Lokecha, Hamalacha. Right? Hamalacha.
Brought you up?
Yeah. Hamalacha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. Right? Harchev picha, expand your mouth.
Yeah.
Right? You should expand your mouth. Right? V'malehu, and I will fill it. Or fill them in the end. Right? So this pasuk is everything. I love this psukim. It's
Where
like
do we say some more?
this is right. It's right before Mizla Soda. No, every day. Right before Mizla Soda. The last is like it's like the second or third last pasuk before Mizla Soda. This is Sephardi. So this is before Mizmor Shulchan Chizbayis. But in Ashkenazi, it's before Mizmor Soda. Right there. Okay. So on this pasuk alone, you can ask many questions because it's Anoich itself. The fact that lashon Anoich is already, if you recall, a discussion about the chof, right? Ani chof, right? I am that which basically is the Hester Panim. I'm the Gilu Panim, and I'm the Hester Panim. That's a shir from back at the time of Purim back then, right? Hashem Elokecha, the Lord your God, Hamalach Me'eretz Mitzrayim. Now it's interesting because everywhere else it talks about leaving Mitzrayim, it never uses a lashon from Alacha. Always says, Asher Etzesi Eschem Me'eretz Mitzrayim, who took you out. I took you out of Mitzrayim. But here it says, I elevated you from Eretz Mitzrayim. I didn't just take you out. I elevated you. I brought you up from there. So obviously, in a shot level, it's the same thing because every time you leave any place to go to Eretz Yisrael, it's why it's called Aliyah. You're going up. But nonetheless, if you're medaik in the lashon, you have to ask the question why he says over here specifically, I elevated, I took you up from Eretz Yisrael, right? And then it says, right, that harche picha, expand your mouth, malehu, right? So what does the Kodesh Baruch Hu say? I took you out of Mitzrayim to feed you, right? Open wide, so I can now give you what you have something to eat. What does this pasuk mean? Obviously, it's talking on a more spiritual level, right? Especially when it comes to Pesach, and we said before, we began last week, that Pesach is all about the mouth. It's all about speech. It's all about speaking. The halacha is you can be sitting at the Seder table all by yourself, all by your lonesome. Nobody else is with you. For some reason, it should never happen to a person like that. But this guy's traveling, got stuck somewhere, had to make a Seder, right? He has got the Haggadah. He's a Talmid Chacham. He knows the Haggadah backwards and forwards. He knows the Perushim in the Haggadah. There's no one to talk to but Hashem himself, and Hashem certainly knows the Haggadah already, right? What's the halacha? Can he simply read it to himself quietly, or not even at all? Obviously, he'll do it, but quietly. No, he must speak out the Haggadah. He must say the words themselves, right? You have a mitzvah, a sipur Yisrael, a mitzvah to recount the going out of Egypt, right? To the extent that it says that the more you do it, the more meshubach you are, the more praiseworthy you are. Why such an emphasis on the speaking? There's so many mitzvahs, so many halakim, so many different details of the Seder. Right? Why is the sipur itself? Why is the telling of the story so important? Okay, there's no question. Recounting, it's all part of a course of tov, being grateful for the good that Hashem did for us. That's also part of the whole thing. That's really what it's supposed to be about. But if you go deeper into the story, right, then you see, and even before that, you go back to the whole concept of covenant. Another remarkable thing, how you get used to things, and because you get used to things, you begin to take things for granted. But the covenant that basically sealed the relationship between Avraham and Hashem, and therefore between Avraham's descendants and the Kodesh Baruch Hu for all history, is Bris Milah, which of course you ask anybody, what does Bris Milah mean? They will tell you it means circumcision, which is, that's what it is, right? Bris Milah, circumcision. What's Milah? Milah is like the circumcision. You do Milah by doing, by circumcising the child. Priya is removing the foreskin, but Milah is making the cut. Right? That's Milah, right? No, but what does it really mean? What do you mean? What does it really mean?
What does the word Milah mean?
Oh, it means covenant of the word. The word Milah is a word. So the actual covenant that the Kodesh Baruch Hu made with Abraham is actually what the Gemara calls bris krus sosai. A bris, a covenant that was sealed with the lips. So Gemara says, what does that mean? It means basically that part of being the Jewish people is that you should mean what you say. Your mouth should be consistent with your heart. Your lips should not utter things that are not truth. If you have to lie for halachic reasons, that's also part of truth, right? But the lie to protect yourself, or the lie stam, because it's an easy way out. That goes against the bris crucial society, to the actual the bris that was cut with the lips in the end. But it goes even back further, right? It goes back even further because it should be the most obvious thing that Pesach is about speech. It's all about freeing the Jewish mouth. It's all about freeing the Jewish mouth. And why should it be about freeing the Jewish mouth? Because you go back to Parashat Bereshis, Pashut, simple point. We don't pay much attention to, but it's such an important chashuv point. What's that? So Kush Baruch Hu makes Adam Arishon. 1 hour he forms the limbs, then he shapes him. The whole process on day 6. So finally, he gets to the point where he's going to breathe a soul, a living, a nefesh chaya into the first man. He's going to give him life, take him out of the golem state, and put him into the human state, the Tzelem Elokim state, by putting a nefesh chaya, a living soul in him. So what is the most important difference between not having the nefesh chaya and getting the actual nefesh chaya? That we have thumbs. He's like, thumbs like. So Uncle says right there, you get what's called ruach mamala, the spirit of speaking. Become a speaking spirit at that point in time. Speech is that which defines a person. And the Zohar actually says that. The Zohar says that you can tell who a person is by what he says. Because the juncture point between the soul and the body is speech. Not action, because animals also perform actions. They bring, there's a halacha, there's a mitzvah of dalach haschus, right? We have a mitzvah of dalach haschus, meaning that if you see someone do something that might be questionable, you judge, and they're basically an honorable person, you should judge on the side of merit. To such an extent, the Gemara says if you don't judge on the side of merit, then you can actually suffer, consequences yourself for not doing it. Mukal laguf, the person can be actually physically, injured by shemayim because he wasn't done l'chas. It's a very important mitzvah. The Gemara brings down different cases. Rabbi Kiva with his future father-in-law, his father-in-law, I think it was, So and then another Tana basically in all these situations where it was so easy, the dan l'chav chov, just the opposite. But they judge the side of merit, and that's where we're supposed to go. Right, so because actions are deceiving. Hanak Teller wrote a book years ago about judge the side of merit. He brought all kinds of stories down based upon true accounts. And one of the stories was about a gabbai who was in the subway station, someplace I guess in New York, and someone in the shul saw him, and he was about to give him shalom aleichem, and he sees him run to a treif restaurant. The rabbi of the shul sees it, but actually it was a rabbi of the shul sees him run to the treif restaurant. He looks, maybe he's making a phone call, something like that. Right? He looks inside. He sees him sitting down at the table, right? Food coming, and he's actually eating this tray food. The rabbi's, beside himself. The gabbai have a shul eating tray food. How's that possible? And he also, make a long story short, that he just couldn't. He heard shortly after he was in the hospital, and he just couldn't come to visit him because he knew the truth. How can this person parade himself as a from Dati Jew? And he's the gabbai of the shul, and he's eating tray food, right? So finally, the rabbi was able to force himself to come and to visit the gabbai. And before he could open his mouth, he said, it's so good to see you, but let me tell you how it was terrible. I was in the subway station, and had an ulcer attack basically, and I was told that in such an attack like that, if you don't eat food immediately, it could be critical. And I had to run into this restaurant and eat this tray food because if I didn't, I might have died in the process. And it was just terrible to eat this thing, and the rabbi realized as he was sitting there listening to the story, how he totally misread the entire thing, because actions are deceiving, both for good and both for bad. That's why by Shabbos it's Malachas Mesheves. The whole idea of Malachas Mesheves is that it has to be thought with kavana, right? Even though we hope for the most part that mitzvahs, in its kavana, that only means in as much as when you're doing the mitzvah, your mind might drift. So it's not a problem. The mitzvah is still being done. But if you don't have kavanah to do the mitzvah itself in the first place, there's no mitzvah. You take the groceries of somebody across the road, some elderly lady who is looking for someone to help her out. She goes inside to find someone to take the bags for him. In the meantime, you think they're your bags. And you pick them up and take them across the road, realizing now they're the wrong bags. She comes running outside and says, "Oh, thank you so much. Can I give you something?" No, what? These are my bags. These are your bags in the end? Does he get a mitzvah? No. He thought they were his bags. Even though the actual ma'aseh was being done, exactly what had to be done, but he had no kavanah whatsoever. If he thought to himself, maybe I can help her. And in the meantime, as he's walking across the road, his mind, drifts to the stock market, ain't bayah. Because the initial starting point was, I'm going to do this mitzvah. It's a mitzvah, ches, I'm going to do it, right? But actions basically don't tell the story. But the Zohar says the moment a person opens his mouth. I mean, how many times are you in someplace public where you see people who look like dressed like successful businessmen, the haircut, the glasses, the suit, everything, and they open their mouth and they talk in a way that's like, I cannot believe they're talking like this. In such a crude fashion. Immediately, no matter how they look on the outside, you don't buy it. You figure it's a fraud. And yet, you can meet people who don't necessarily dress so fancy. And you get into a conversation with them, and they're intelligent, and they're sensitive, and they're polite, and the whole thing, and you walk with tremendous respect for them, even if they don't look, so respect from the outside. You even find reasons why they might be dressed like that, because they have no money to buy clothing. So actions are deceiving, but the moment a person opens their mouth, it shows how much soul, how much goof. And the Gemara says this. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Tzadi Tes Amud Beis. It's a remarkable Gemara. It's an amazing Gemara that ties like this pasuk, where it's so informational. It's like so critical and so crucial for understanding what we're doing here in this world. And why Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim in the first place. And it says in the Gemara, I might have thought that a person is here to do maisim, right? Well, of course, look at the world, how physical this world is. People are doing maisim all the time. The Gemara brings a passage from Eov, I think it's from Eov, that a person's mouth is an okif for him. It's like his mouth is like a saddle for him that he rides. So this I learned, the Gemara says, that the world was made for speech. Mankind exists for the sake of speech. Actions are secondary, right? And he says after that, the Gemara says that maybe it means any kind of speech, right? Even sichas chulin. So the Gemara brings a pasuk that these words should not leave your mouth ever. A pasuk from the Sefer Yeshua. From this we learn that a person was created specifically to speak a divrei Torah. That's what he's here for. That's the whole point. So now we can understand, go back to the story of Moshe Benu.
Where was the Gemara? Tzadi Tes where?
Sanhedrin.
Where?
Amud Beis.
Yeah.
Tzadi Tes Amud Beis and Sanhedrin. So right at the top, right? So now we can go back and understand the story, right, of Moshe Benu. Moshe Benu is going down to Mitzrayim. Okay? What is his taina? God has appointed you. He's telling you, you must go down to Mitzrayim to save the Jewish people. What is his chief taina? Right? What's his main complaint? Why he can't do it? Okay, maybe behind the scenes he feels bad on behalf of Aaron and that comes up later on, right? But what's his main time? He says, Ani oros v'sayim. I have uncircumcised lips. And the whole story back when he was a child, in Mitzrayim, where Parah had his Khartoum, the astrologer. They told him that one day he's going to take the crown from him, to do the whole test with the coal and the diamond, whatever. But the bottom line was that he's worried about oros v'sayim. So Kodesh Baruch Hu says, who's the one who forms the mouth, who puts the words in your mouth to be able to speak? Everything has been shemaim, the ears, the whole thing. What are you worried about? For 7 days he argues his entire point. But in the midst of all this, one of the most bizarre parts of the entire story, which again, a very important, critical part that people don't pay enough attention to because it's important, key to the entire thing. He's going down to Mitzrayim, right? He's got a son to do bris milah on. On the way down, he gets to the parking lot of the Holiday Inn, right? He figures he should check in first because, to do it in the parking lot over here, it's not appropriate. It's just a few minutes longer. Believe me, you can assume that Moshe Benu, he has nothing else on his mind but doing this bris milah in his son the first chance he can get. Traveling, dangerous, okay? He waits a little bit too long, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu sends a nachash to swallow him up to the point of the bris milah. Tzipporah recognizes from this what has to be done. She does the bris milah herself by picking up a tzur, right? A flintstone or some kind of, probably an expert in those days. They didn't have nice, like today. So whatever, she does the bris milah, throws it down and says, you're my, chasam bedamim, my husband my chatan in blood because of the whole episode basically. And Moshe almost dies. He's on the way down to Mitzrayim, handpicked by Kodesh Baruch Hu to save the Jewish people, and he almost dies along the way. And why does he die along the way? Almost because
he's almost killed along the way by God who's sending him as a
yeah, because this whole thing. And on top of all that, what's the halacha if a father does not perform bris milah on, and it wasn't even a mitzvah, like the Torah hasn't been given yet.
It's not on the father, it's on the son.
It's on the father too. It's a mitzvah asa and the father to do bris milah on the son until they can do the son. But what's the onish? You're over a mitzvah asa. There's no chiyuv. There's not even chiyuv koros. You can force cajole the father to do it On the son, if the son grows up, becomes bar mitzvah, and doesn't do bris milah on himself at some point, then he's chai, of course, in the end. But the father is certainly not chai misa. So what's this chiyuv misa on Moshe Rabbeinu? Tzipora, in this episode, right, is actually written Tzadi Pei Reish Hey. The vav is missing. So if you look at the letters, it's sur, which he took, and the rest is peh, right, mouth, right? The rock, in the sense that freed the mouth, was Moshe Rabbeinu. He's going down to Mitzrayim to face who? Who's the main antagonist? Paro, which is peh ra'ah, the evil mouth, right? The Gemara says that the Paro made them work avoda parach, right? That it were very hard slaves. The Gemara Darshan Zan says, well, it's perach, the soft mouth, right? What does it mean, perach? He conned them, right? The measure says he conned them. In the beginning, when they first, Paro sent out the word that everybody should come out and help build Pittam and Ramses and all these different, cities, whatever. And, to be a loyal Egyptian, that's what you have to do. We Jews like to be loyal citizens wherever we are. We have to come out in the whole, Jewish people as much as possible, put as much labor we can. No problem, because Egyptians were working side by side with us. We're all getting paychecks, working side by side. We've got Egyptians over here, Jews, whatever. Then at one point in time, the Egyptians stopped coming, says the Medrash, but the paychecks are still there. Okay, so they're losing out. We're doing it. They're not, it's a little bit curious why they're not here, but, they're lazy, whatever. We're still getting paid. And later on, then Paro stops the paychecks. And they go, well, okay, that's, enough is enough already. This is like too much. At that point in time, there are already taskmasters that prevented from going home anymore at this point in time. The shibud actually began. That was perach men, a soft mouth. It was he conned them into this avoda. There's another measure that says no perach. A deeper perach is Paro made them work so hard specifically that they could not speak divrei Torah. They should come home at the end of the day and be such a sense of yeyush and be broken that they would not speak divrei Torah. They would not get involved in meaningful discussions. Why? Because the moment that it would renew their spirits, it would keep them basically rebellious against Paro. Paro is trying to break the spirit, like we spoke about before. That what's Paro doing? After Moshe comes down and says, "Let my people go," so Paro says, "Okay, now just because they're distracted and this whole thing, let's make the avoda even more difficult. Let's make the same demand. We won't increase the demand, but we won't give them the cash. No straw. You have to go find the cash anywhere you can in Mitzrayim and make the same quota. If you're interested in building up Pittam and Ramses and all these different cities and Mitzrayim through slave labor, the last thing you do is take away the materials they need to do it, because you're working against yourself now. Because what are they going to do? Physically, it's not possible. You can beat them all you want, you can kill them all you want, but the bottom line is that it's not going to work for you. So obviously the point is not building up anything, but more like tearing down the Ratzon of Bnei Yisrael to try to break them. And what was the main breaking? Right? The main breaking was they should not use their mouths for divrei Torah. They shouldn't speak divrei Torah. They shouldn't remain connected to anything meaningful going down from Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's why not changing the language was so important again. It's one of the schuyot to leave Mitzrayim. So that's why Moshe is so concerned. Moshe is saying, if I was only going down to free Bnei Yisrael, what difference does it make if I have a stutter, don't have a stutter, I can't speak properly, big deal. He could take me half an hour to get the words out, but eventually Paro's going to hear, let my people go. He's going to hear it eventually, and that's the point. Because the point is not just freeing the Jewish people. That's not what it's all about. It's about freeing the Jewish mouth. That should be the meshubad, what that means in a second, right? But if that's what it's about, then how can I go down if I'm Ors Vasayim, if my mouth itself is meshubad, right? Is enslaved, so to speak. I can't control it the way I'm supposed to control it. So how am I the representative to go down there to free the Jewish people from Paro, who's the Perah in the end? That's also why you see, like when Moshe is complaining, he's afraid of Paro, so Kosh Baruch Hu makes the stick turn into a snake, because as the lesson points out, the snake represented Paro. The original, because the snake is a horror. Paro, all one of the same thing, and Rashi brings down why dafka that, because the snake. What was the main chet of the snake? Was he spoke lashon hara back in the Gan Eden, and Moshe is now speaking lashon hara about the Jewish people, specifically Dasan Bavirim, but the Jewish people in general, and as a result of that, it stirs the whole Geula story at the end. But at least we understand now why bris milah is such a major thing, because for Moshe Rabbeinu, the average father who doesn't perform bris milah on his son, fine, he's done something he shouldn't have done, or he didn't do something he should have done at the end, right? But that's where it ends. But since Moshe, the whole point of Moshe is bris milah, He exists specifically for the sake of the covenant of the word, right? So therefore, for him to even miss a moment, his own personal tafkid is undone. He's not just like the father doing bris milah on his son. He is the Moshiach, the redeemer of the Jewish people, is going down specifically to Mekayim the concept of bris milah, to fulfill this pasuk that says, "Anochi Hashem Lokecha Hamalecha Meretz Mitzrayim Harchiv Picha Malehu." Right? That's what it's talking about. Talking about, open your mouth, free your mouth, and I will fill it. What will I fill it with in the end? What I'm going to fill it with? So Yeshai brings the pasuk, right? The Dibur Shem. So, what does this mean? Right? What does this mean?
So in other words, just for a second, so in other words, if I understand you correctly, I know the Moshe Rabbeinu then was what Paro was doing everything possible to distract the Jewish nation, and ultimately through this avodah perach, this hard labor, he was able to get them to assimilate to the point where they dropped to the 49th level of Tum. So he was really pushing them
to the envelope. Pushing the envelope, yeah.
And so so essentially, where did Miriam come into this now? Where did Miriam come into this?
So Miriam was unaffected. That's the thing. Miriam remained. She was loyal. First of all, she was a Neviah. But that's what the Gemara points out. But she somehow miraculously was unaffected. Aaron also was unaffected by it. Don't forget the Levium also were patur from the Avodah the entire time through.
But how did that? In other words, she got her father now to recognize that they had gotten to the point where they were so distracted that they weren't even having relation. They
divorced.
Which was the most important mitzvah, which was given, even before bris milah, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So now she incited Amram to her
encourage, encourage
the father to now
take back his wife and everything.
Right.
Right.
So how did that now fit into the antidote to distraction?
So we'll see, but there's no coincidence. That's why it says a Ben Levi and Bas Levi.
Yeah. Who's
Levi in the Chumash? Right. How does Levi get his name? Where's the word Levi come from? From Leviah. Right. That now because of this child will act as the connecting piece between me and my husband. That's what Levi does. So, but the Levi themselves act as the connecting, the source of Kohanim, right? So they act as the conduit between the Kosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people. We'll see it's a very important part of the picture. There's a very, like Moshe Rabbeinu gets to the 50th level of the Nun Shari Bina just before he dies, but he's born with the 49 already. The Halavai, we should even get to a few of them. But he comes in this world already with 49 levels of the Nun Shari Bina, as the Gemara says. He exists for a specific reason. He has a specific reality that's going to make him the leader par excellence all through the Midbar, and the reason why the Jewish people can get out of Mitzrayim and change and reverse the whole thing. He's not totally successful. He loses 4/5 of the Jewish population of Mitzrayim in Makas Choshech, right? And the one that comes out, Sarbonim, the entire time they're causing all kinds of problems. But nevertheless, the Gula does take place through him, and will eventually take place through him when he comes back. There's a Gilgul, whatever Mashiach will be in the history. But Levi is the key. That's also by Har Sinai, by the Egel Zahav, Milah Shemelai, is Levi.
So I heard what you said. So in other words, they were really not the ones that were affected by the Avodah Perach.
Yeah, because they maintain their connection to Hashem the entire way through. If you attach yourself to Levi, then you will be connected to Hashem. That's their role. That's the role of the Kohen.
They couldn't have a hashpah on the rest of the people in order to,
because they lived very cut off lives in a sense. They were very off to the side, and the rest of the people got very assimilated. But let's take a look for a second.
No, here, because it's nothing like it's like the same thing today. But you have people who maintain the Masorah, and then other people who
have no connection to them, and they have as a result they don't benefit from the connection they have. The Gemara in Chulin on Kuf Lamed Tes Amud Beis asks the question, Mordechai min Torah Menayim. We have to ask that question because Megillus Esther is written after the Torah is closed, and we hold the entire thing, basically is Ruach HaKodesh, and the story is obviously Hashgacha Prati. So there must be some kind of remnants. The Torah is the blueprint for Ma'aseh Bereshis, so therefore by definition, if it happens historically, especially a geula, a significant geula. Somehow there must be a remez to the characters and the plot that took place. And it finds the pasuk Mar Drori in Parashat Kisisa. And then it asks the question, Esther Nitor Manayin, right? And it finds it has to Esther Panim in Parashat Vayelech, right? And then it says Haman Nitor Manayin, Haman Eitz, the Duif Neitz Das Tavara, right? So that's the shortest of Amalek when Adam ate this Das Tavara, so losing the Haman. And then, which is perfectly fine. That's great. It's fantastic. It's like gematria. You figured out a way to find an allusion, a remez, to these three people in the Megillah, in the Torah itself. And the Gemara throws us for a loop. The Gemara says, Moshe, in the Torah, Menayin. And at that point in time, we should all be going, what? What do you need a remez to Moshe? It's called Torah's Moshe. Moshe's everywhere. You don't need a remez. He's written up, Moshe this, Yom Hashem, Moshe. It's like Moshe's all over the place, the entire Torah. You don't need a remez. It was even more mysterious, more out of place seemingly, is the Gemara's answer. It doesn't say what we ask, right? It doesn't say, well, Remez, but Moshe is written everywhere. It comes back and it says b'shagam hu basa, the word b'shagam. And we're all going, what's b'shagam, right? So Rashi says, well, if you add up the letters b'shagam, you don't have to say b'shagam, you can say b'shagam hu basa, it's not. B'shagam is already the base of the superfluous, changes the gematria by 2, right? And because it changes the gematria by 2, turns out b'shagam is equal to Moshe gematria. So the Priesthood says, this can't be the same question that we're asking about the other ones. Right? The other ones we're clearly looking for a mazim, and here to go out of our way for the gematria, and so what? So Moshe, the gematria b'shagam is equal to Moshe back in the end of Parashat Bereshit, and therefore, so what did it solve over here? So
you went too fast for me.
Yeah.
Go through that. What happened?
Just simply, the Gemara says, where is Moshe alluded to in the Torah? And the Gemara answers by saying b'shagam. B'shagam, which means he's also Kush Baruch in the Parashat Bereshit, right at the end, the last paragraph there, where Kush Baruch Hu is saying, I've had it with these people. I'm going to destroy the world. I'm going to bring a flood. B'shagam hu basar, he's also flesh and blood. I can do this. They're not malachim. They're not godly beings. They're only flesh and blood. And they're vulnerable. I'm going to wipe them away. So Rashi points out that the Gemara doesn't explain why that works. To figure it for yourself, but Rashi brings down b'shagam is the gematria of Moshe. B'shagam equals Moshe.
And it's a Gemara that you're talking about?
Then Chulin. 139b.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. So the Priesthood says the question had to have changed somewhat. We got to Moshe Rabbeinu. What's the question? Not where is a remez to Moshe Rabbeinu in the Torah, but more where is a remez to the fact that Noah could have been Moshe Rabbeinu in his time. Obviously, it's a lot to read into the Gemara, but the Priesthood, Rav Tzadok Cohen, you can rely upon it for things like this, especially when you see the pshat that he gives over. It makes perfect sense. So what's the story? He says because every 10 generations, at least back in those times, was a potential shas geula. 10 is a number of perfection. 10 spheres, is a time of for things to it's a significant turning point. Whatever, but it was a time that the Torah could have been given. Noah could have been Moshe Rabbeinu in his time. And he says that's the reason why the rain fell from Shemayim for 40 days and 40 nights. Water is always a symbol of Torah, right? Fell for 40 days and 40 nights. How long was Moshe and Har Sinai receiving Torah? 40 days and 40 nights. What a coincidence, right? And he says, furthermore, that's why Hashem could easily have simply brought the flood with the 40 days and 40 nights. It wasn't like a Kodesh Baruch said, well, gee, we don't have so much rain in Shemayim. How can we finish this job in time? We'll have there's water on earth too. Well, those waters surge from below for 150 days, and that will bring together a tremendous flood on Ma'aseh Bereshis. It didn't have to be that way. 40 days and 40 nights could have supplied enough rain to wash out everybody. Why did Kodesh Baruch Hu add the 150 days of water surging from the bottom? He says, because that symbolizes Torah Shebal Peh. The water coming from Shemayim, right? That's Torah Sheksav, which is straight from Shemayim, right? Mipi Gvura, LaMoshe Rabbeinu, letter by letter, word for word. You can't change that. You can't edit that. That's Baruch Hu's Kaveya. That's Torah Sheksav. Whatever it is, that's what it is. No more and no less. Torah Shebal Peh works differently, right? It's based upon Torah Sheksav, as the Gemara points at all the different Ramazim, right? All the principles of Torah Shebal Peh are all in Torah Sheksav. They are immutable. You can't change them. But Torah is Kavua. But, except for one difference, and that is that, you can't light fire on Shabbat, but what about a light bulb? right? What about electric doors? What about an elevator on Shabbos? And it works. What about if you change the way it works? The principles. Torah Shebal Peh is basically the evolving application of Torah Shebal. In every generation, right, you have to find a way to answer all the questions that come up, all the shadows that come up. Could be because Baruch said to Moshe Rabbeinu, when they ask about a light bulb on Shabbos, tell me it's aser. And Moshe might have said, "What's a light bulb? Don't worry about it. One day they'll figure it out, or maybe he knew what a light bulb was, but nobody else would know about it. We don't have any writings, we don't have any recordings to show that Moshe dealt with light bulbs back in his time. Maybe he knew about it, but that was a later application that came, much after what's his name, Watt. What's his name? Watt. Yeah.
Tommy Watt.
The guy who.
Thomas Edison.
Thomas Edison. Right. Tommy Watt. Right. Yeah. Watch this. But that Thomas Edison, right? Until they had the light bulb.
I suppose our engineer didn't answer that one quickly.
Yeah, we thought it was too silly a question. But that until it came around, so all these applications. So Torah, there's an aspect of Torah Shebal Peh is always evolving. The Gemara, is dealing all the time with Piskei Halacha based upon principles that we take from the Torah itself, which are again don't change. We find how these principles apply to a situation today. So it's always evolving, and it comes out through the poskim. Comes into the Tanoim, the Tanoim before the Tanoim, the Zugos, going back to Har Sinai. After that, the Tanoim, the Amoraim, the Rishonim, the Geonim, Rishonim, Akraim, all the way until today. Right? We contribute to that. So what is that? That's obviously the most controversial part of Torah itself, and that part is basically is what separates the Orthodox and the rest of the religious parts of the Klal Yisrael is Torah Shebal Peh. Because from our perspective, right, from our tradition, it is a tradition that has not changed, through the years. Maybe some parts have got lost, and some parts, we had to, are still in Safek, there's machlokas and things like that. But we know. Whatever we know to be, in Masar, we know that. And the rest, basically, we, for the most part, to be careful, we go machmir a lot of times to make sure we cover all points of view, all opinions, except in situations of crisis where we can perhaps rely upon more medical opinions. But we're always working with a certain known factor as part of the tradition in the end. Everybody else would basically say, well, Torah Shebal Peh is what the rabbis came along and simply made up and added to, the Torah itself may have been divinely inspired, something like that, but Torah Shebal Peh, they hold as a rabbinical thing. That's the way they hold it. Because it comes through our mouths, it comes through our pens. We write these things down. They're teachings of Chazal, right? There's Midrashim, it's part of Torah Shebal Peh. What is actually going on in Torah Shebal Peh?
Could you just back up for 1 second?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you said that the 40 days rain came from heaven.
Right.
That's symbolic of Torah Shabbat.
Exactly.
You said the water coming from below
Yeah,
was 150
I'm
days.
getting that point right now. I didn't finish that point.
Okay, Rob.
You didn't get that point because I didn't finish that
fast,
point.
Rob. I can't think as fast as you talk.
We only have one night.
Okay. Okay.
So the Pri Tzaddik explains, because basically what is Torah Shebal Peh? It's also Dibur Hashem. It's also Dibur Hashem.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is that the Dibur Hashem of Torah Shebal was a Kosh Baruch Hu dictating letter by letter, word by word. Actually, the beginning was just letter by letter. But to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he wrote it down exactly as he heard it. No, you could ask questions. You could, say, what does that mean and where's that going? But he didn't have any, authorship other than the fact that he was recording it, as a good we call it stenographer, writing it down, But Torah Shebal Peh is Dibur Hashem, but it comes as opposed from the outside to us, the inside. It comes from the inside to the outside. In other words, the same light that Hashem used to give over Torah Shebal instead comes through our neshama. It actually works its way down from the top, but we don't deal with the top levels of the soul, which are Chayim Yechida. But it comes down basically through the neshama, through the ruach, right? Eventually, down the level of nefesh, actually goes as far as the ruach, and comes out in the form of words. That's the way Torah Shebal Peh works. He says, nefesh, ruach, neshama, each level has its own levels of nun shari bina, because the nun shari bina in Kabbalah, that's the way the light's transformed. It actually comes from what's called the 32, lamed base nesivas chachma, the 32 paths of chachma, which correspond to the 32 times that Elokim is recorded in Parshas Bereshis, correspond to Lev also as well. That's the light starts to make its way down. It gets the level of bina in the spheres, where it now becomes filtered. And how does it get filtered? To what's called the nun shari bina. So Gemara says, in Rosh Hashanah, that when Hashem made the world, He made the world with Nun Shari Bina, and Moshe got 49, right? Because the light that made Ma'aseh Bereshis had to first be filtered to the level of Bina, which has 50 gates. 50, every gate basically is just another form of filtering the light. So eventually, through those 50 gates, the light is now spread out enough that you can have all of this. All that you see, the entire Ma'aseh Bereshis for thousands of years, the universe, to the farthest reaches of the universe, basically, the stars, the planet, everything in Ma'aseh Bereshis, physically, spiritually, came about as a result of the fact that the light was filtered through this Nun Shari Bina. Okay, it's a more Kabbalist discussion for another time, but that's what it says. So he says, since each level, there are 3 levels with Nun Shari Bina, that's 3 times 50, is equal to 150. The amount of days the water surged from below.
What are the three levels of Bina?
There's Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. Each have 10 spheres, right? So each have its own Nun Shari Bina. So therefore you have 3 levels, each with Nun Shari Bina. So therefore it's going through each Nun Shari Bina of each level. Your 3 times 50 is 150, corresponding to the amount of days that the water surged from below. Symbolizing that if Noach had been able, and just to add a little twist to this whole thing, even though Moshe stands for Moch, Shes, and Hevel, because that's the path of the Gilgal was brought down, but actually there was a piece of Noach and Moshe too to be fixed up because Noach did do the job, and that's why when it says Im metzati chen beinecha in Pasuk Kisisa, Moshe is saying to Kosh Baruch Hu after he finally got forgiveness for the golden calf, if I have found chen in your eyes, right? So then reveal to me, your kavod and understand. So the Rizal points out the word chen, of course, is the reverse of Noach. Noach matzah chen ben Hashem, right? It's a reverse image, basically. So that was the aspect of Noach and Moshe Beinu. Just a side point. Makes things more confusing, but that's, it's all built into the idea. So therefore, as a result of that Noach, and this is what the Gemara is alluding to, that Noach could have been Moshe in his time. Actually, Moshe Beinu doesn't make a difference. The neshama is a neshama. He came from Hevel, so Noach, he had a piece of that. If Noach had, and that's why Noach takes 120 years. How long does Moshe live for? 120 years. He was the first one to die at the age of 120. Noach took 120 years, not just to give him his chance of the tshuva, because that's really what it was all about. Noach was there to try to makarv the generation. He was supposed to bring Torah down for the world in his time. He failed. And as the concept is that a Kosh Baruch Hu puts a koyach of tov in the world to accomplish something historically. We spoke about this before. If we don't use the koyach, it doesn't go back to Shammai. It gets used for something else instead. And very often the opposite. So instead of Kabbalah Satorah taking place in Noach's time, instead you have the flood, the Mabul. You have water, which is Torah, coming down from above, and the water from below, surging from below. Basically, that was what Torah was. It was supposed to be instead have been. It was supposed to have been instead the Torah Ksaf and Torah Baal Peh. It didn't work out that way. Instead, we got the flood. But the point is that's the story. But the point that the priest is bringing out is how basically Torah Baal Peh works. Torah Baal Peh works because basically a person has become a conduit for the light of Hashem. That's the goal. We have this mitzvah of bir chumetz, right? Every other time of the every other Isser, Can you have treif in the house?
Yeah.
Right? Is it actually to have treif in your? If you're cleaning when he shows up, it's the Filipinos like that. She comes to your house and she brings with her a piece of meat that's not kosher. She wants to leave it in your fridge for the day, right? Is that mutter? Is that aser? Can you cook treif? Can you work in a? There's a shayla, relevant Charlotte. Can you cook in a, let's say, a nursing home someplace where you're actually cooking treif meat for the people, not Jewish people there. It's all Gentile, right? For them, it's perfectly permissible. But you're a from Jew. Can you cook that meat for them? The answer, of course, is yes. It's mutter because there's no issue to cook the treif meat. Basi b'chalav is a little bit different, but also it starts off heter anyhow. Special, it's a chok, it's a different type of isser. But for the most part, when it comes to Isurim, you don't have it. Not only that, by the way, but what happens if even by basar v'chalav, if 1/60th, of milk falls into a chillum pot, it disperses, you can't find anymore. You didn't do it purposely, right? What's the halacha? Batal b'shishi, right? If you have at least 60 parts to the one part, basically that the milk is not, even though chemically speaking, you have to open it up and you examine in a microscope, you find little molecules of milk. Doesn't make a difference. It goes up to the tam, and the tam is not there, so therefore it becomes permissible. Same thing by treif, right? And by treif even more so, you can actually have treif by heter to cancel. There's different halachas, but even the mashu is still mutter. It's not a problem. You have, as long as the proper proportions. Only by chumash is there a mitzvah dafka to give up every last drop, even a mashu, right? The mevatel or sell it, what the case would be. Why specifically is that the case?
It's also a photo source.
Yeah, for a similar reason. We'll see why. But this, I'll see what, but for some reason, right? This is the reason why. Because the whole point of being an Or L'Goyim, because Baruch Hu takes us to the first mitzvah he gives to the Jewish people, right? We're in Mitzrayim still. As Rashi points out, the Torah could begin in Parshas Bo, with the first mitzvah Hashem gave to Bnei Israel. What's the first mitzvah he gives to us? Kiddush HaChodesh, right? To sanctify the new moon. Could you even do the mitzvah Mitzrayim?
No.
Could you do the mitzvah even in the Midbar? No. They get to Israel, conquer the land, whatever, divide the land, establish the Sanhedrin. With the Sanhedrin, you can do the mitzvah Kiddush HaChodesh. Why would that be the first mitzvah given to Klal Yisrael?
The Rambam says that without one Jew in Eretz Israel,
Can't do it.
the Jewish people don't exist.
Yeah. So the question is, why is that the first mitzvah?
Observing times. Observing times.
Observing time? Yeah, okay, but there's a mitzvah for that too. That's crucial. That's a part of who we are, basically. But why? It's Yedua. That Hakadosh Baruch Hu gave every mitzvah to Klal Yisrael at a specific time because of where they were holding and where they had to go. Every mitzvah was somehow attached. That's why by Mara, right, they had the whole episode with Mara with the water, right? And as a result of that, they got Shabbos Dinim. All of a sudden, just out of nowhere, with these mitzvahs came up. No, because whatever was learned over here paved the way for these specific mitzvahs. So Hakadosh Baruch Hu gave the mitzvah Kiddush HaChodesh to Klal Yisrael on the way to Mitzrayim, which is why Rosh Chodesh is mentioned in the Haggadah as well. You might have thought it should start from there. Why? Why would I think that way? Why do I think the story should start by Rosh Chodesh Nisan? Because the whole mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh began with that mitzvah. Why? What's the connection? Because Baruch Hu says to the Jewish people, okay, I'm about to take you to Mitzrayim. I have stepped into history. I don't like doing this. I'm always running the show, but always from behind the scenes. I don't like doing miracles because the Sibah Mechuvenet, for which Ma'aseh Bereshis was created, is Bechira. Bechira, by definition, requires Hester Pani. The moment that Kodesh Baruch Hu steps into history and he makes it that it's obvious that he's doing things, it's a nace. What's a nace? The word nace means a banner. So it announces Hashem is running the show. Hashem does not want to have to work because it takes away the whole Sibah from Ma'aseh Bereshis. He wants to do things in a way that you can choose using your intellect. That's what the Sforno says. Why is man made B'Tselem Elokim and not B'Tselem Shekai or some other name? Because Elokim, the word Elohim itself can be used for a shofet, because the Sforno explains that Elohim means any intellectual being that uses its intellect for the sake of distinguishing between one thing and another thing. This is what Kodesh Baruch Hu did to make Ma'aseh Bereshis, and that's what we mimic a Kodesh Baruch Hu. We use our brain, our intellect, to figure out truth and what has to be done. The Torah guides us, but you have to use your mind all the time, which is why it's used by Shoftim as well. That's what it's all about. So Kodesh Baruch Hu does not want to have to step into history in any overt way if he doesn't have to, but he's doing it now because we weren't Zeicha. As we said before, the Jewish people did not choose Geula. It was only because of Bris Avos that Kodesh Baruch Hu stopped the process of assimilation before Makkah's Dam and reversed the process with every Makkah until finally got to Nun Shrei Kedusha because of Bris Avos. If it was not for Bris Avos, the Kodesh Baruch Hu would have said, bye. You guys didn't choose it? What do you want from me? I gave you a chance, But Bris Avos meant somebody had to leave Mitzrayim at some point in time. This is the last generation. After you guys, there's no one left anymore because you'll be assimilated. So Kodesh Baruch Hu stepped in on behalf of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to save Klal Yisrael. So therefore, Kodesh Baruch Hu is not going to squander the opportunity, so to speak. He says, for me to go ahead and step into history in such an obvious, overt way that even Paro is being forced to understand who Hashem is, not Elokim, because Elokim works by Derek Teva. Even Paro knows Elokim, which is why he's throwing them into the Nile River, as Rashi explains. Because now that Elokim works, but through Teva, and he always used the flood. He knows Elokim, but Mi Hashem, he says. Why should Paro have to know Mi Hashem? Why this whole thing? Because Kodesh Baruch Hu is saying that this is going to establish the whole reason why I'm doing this and who you are as a nation. So the first mitzvah he takes is Kiddush HaChodesh. Why? Because the moon symbolizes the Jewish people. As the Gemara points out, Elikui Lavana is a bad symbol for the Jewish people. When you go outside and you do Kiddush Lavana, you recover Pnei Shechina, right? The sun symbolizes the rest of the world because it's 365 days. The physical world is symbolized by 365 days. They are tachas Hashemas, ein devar tachas, ein chedesh tachas Hashemas, right? Refers to the physical world, as the Maral points out, but l'malam Hashemas, tachas Hashemas, there's nothing new. But above the sun, where Klal Yisrael lives and exists, that's a whole different reality. There's all kinds of chedushim at that point. We can mechadish all kinds of things, and actually we can credit as a creative Bereshis, Ma'aseh Bereshis mechadash on our own in the end. So Kadosh Baruch Hu says, he says, for this to work, for this to be justifiable, for me doing this, you have to understand why you're going out. Why are you going out? What's unique about the moon? Well, it waxes and it wanes. It comes, that's fine. That's also true. Jewish history is exactly like that. We wax and we wane. It's part of extinction. We come back full force, and then almost extinction again, right? But that's not the most important point. What is unique about the moon? I don't know if you can see it tonight, but Kirsh Levana, you can see this. It's incredible how bright and white this hunk of stone is floating around, in space around the Earth. I think it's the only moon that goes counterclockwise. All the rest of them go clockwise. This one goes counterclockwise in the end. Our moon. But it is bright. It is white. You can actually see with it in an area where there's no light, and it's a full moon. There's no clouds. You can actually see the ground. You can distinguish rocks and all kinds of things. It's incredible. And it's only a rock. And you look at it and you say, where is it? If you didn't know better as a child, you'd assume it's some kind of like, it's like the sun a bit. Okay, not as bright as the sun because you can look at it, but it's got some kind of like, aspect of light built. That's what you would assume. No, that's a rock. Wow, Abba, where is it getting its light from? From the sun. I don't see any sun. Well, it's over there. It's behind the earth, right? The moon can see the sun because it's further out there. You can't see because you're on this part of the planet's around, but the moon can see the sun. And the moon's receiving its light from the sun. All that light is just a reflection of the sun's light. That's exactly what it is. So Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you're not just an Or L'Goyim, right? Don't think that I'm taking you to become an Or L'Goyim. It's not in the classical understanding of Or L'Goyim. Like, for example, Einstein with E equals MC squared. Is that Or L'Goyim? Some level, maybe perhaps not what the Torah means. Karl Marx, every turning point, every change of philosophy and history, somehow there's a Jew involved somewhere in the process, right? Is that what the Torah is talking about? No. So then what are we talking about? More accurately, the Jewish people are reflectors to the Goyim. Not just Or L'Goyim, reflectors to the Goyim. The whole point of Klal Yisrael is to reflect the light of Hashem, who's like the sun, to the world. And if you have a lunar eclipse, right, for example, at nighttime, right, where it gets covered up for whatever reason, the earth blocks the light in such a way, it's dark. Is there any other source of light? Well, the stars are there, but they're not so bright. You can't tell much from the stars, right? If the moon's not giving off its light at nighttime, there's nothing else to do it. If the Jewish people are not going to reflect the light of Hashem to the world, no one else is going to do it. The world will revert back to Tov V'Vohu, as the Gemara says in Shabbos, Yom HaShishi, the Hay is the Chamishi Chumshet Torah. Shishi refers to the 6th day of Sivan. The world was commanded, if the Jewish people accept Torah, 2,448 on the 6th day of Sivan, right? The well and is good and fun. The whole is you can refuse to go on, but if not, the world goes back to Tov V'Vohu. Okay, that's to sum it up, right? In a general sense, in a big picture sense.
Isn't it very? When you think about it, that when you see the moon and the sun, it's a rock, like you say, it's a rock. I mean, it's not a mirror; it's only a rock.
Right.
I mean, so a rock will absorb the light, correct? So how is it reflecting?
Well, it's round enough, I guess it's flat enough to be able to reflect the light.
All materials reflect, except for ideal black body, everything reflects.
Yeah, the only difference is that if it's jagged.
Depends how much.
Yeah, if it's jagged, so it's reflected different angles. So there's not enough light collecting together necessarily to receive that reflection. Some we're far enough away, the moon is round, whatever, but enough light gets reflected to us in the end that we can see it's like a white light. It's not even gray, like it's like white.
So essentially, so you're saying that we are like, if I understand, we are like the moon principally because that we are the conduit by which we bring in the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu into the world.
Exactly.
And without us being that mediator or that arbitrator or that medium, then the world would be destroyed.
Exactly. Go to Tohu Vohu. Go back to Tohu Vohu. Kodesh Baruch Hu steps in at some point, corrects things, but usually at great cost.
So
to mankind.
that's why the flood came then.
Right.
Because Noah was not
Exactly.
a medium. He
Yeah.
was not a medium.
Exactly.
He was not a moon at that
Exactly.
time.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So based upon that, if you have a pipe, for example, let's say you put a,
So in other words, just go back. So in other words, it's not a coincidence that the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh would have been brought when Moshe arrived.
right. That's dafka.
That's dafka.
That's setting up. It's the fact that it's taking place at Yitzis Mitzrayim is saying this is the reason for Yitzis Mitzrayim. This is the basis. If you don't fulfill this concept, in a sense, you reverse the whole concept of Yitzis Mitzrayim in the end.
But he was the medium that brought this.
Yeah, because he's functioning. Levi functions in that capacity automatically. That's why the whole story revolves around a Ben Levi, a Bas Levi, Miriam, and all that, because that's what Levi does. Levi is the example of this idea of acting as a conduit. And that's what Moshe's struggle is too. Moshe's whole struggle, in the beginning, he gets Aaron to come to act as his, because the other pshat as to why, what oral society means, and Moshe was concerned with, because Moshe was basically living extremely high level. And he was saying, how can I go, this is actually it's actually a beautiful idea, because it ties the whole concept of the moon's complaint in the first place. Of Alpi Kabbalah, when the moon says, how can two kings wear the same crown? Kabbalah explains, it's not talking about jealousy over here. The moon corresponds to the Malchus of Atzilus, which corresponds to Shekhinah, which is on the level in the spheres where evil can't get to it. If I have to project my light into that world, this is all from the Rizal, right? Into that world, then the koiches of Tumah can get to that light and abuse it. That's what I'm worried about, says the Shekhinah. So Moshe Rabbeinu has a similar taina. When he says, I'm also a sign, basically, how can I translate, it's like taking a gadol ador, and asking him to go meet some bocher, let's say somebody potential might be, from one day in a bar, right, and try to convince him to leave that bar and go to yeshiva. It's like, it's like, Hechitimsa, the entire thing is like, you have to go in a place like that in the first place, and to talk to him is like an environment, it's like, it's not going to happen. It's not real. So Moshe says, how can I go down to Paro's palace? This is the source of tumah in the world at this stage of history. And talk to this Peh Ra'ah, this evil mouth, and translate the words of Hashem in a way that he can relate to it and connect to it and go out. I don't want to go down that level. I don't want to go so far in the end. So Kodesh Baruch Hu says, fine, Aaron will be your Elohim. He'll be your Navi. He'll talk on your behalf. He'll be your mouthpiece. So Aaron is acting like Bina with respect to Chachma. Aaron's taking the light of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he's filtering it on a level because he's on the same level as Moshe Rabbeinu is. So therefore, he's taking that light and filtering it down that Paro can connect to it. But you see that he disappears from the picture. Once they're out of the Mitzrayim, and Moshe is now the one talking to Klal Yisrael the entire time, there's no second, there's no mouthpiece anymore. It's all Moshe speaking. You never hear about Oros Mosayim again after that. He speaks perfectly fine. He's the great communicator, in fact, right? Because now he's in an environment where he can actually, connect and maintain that level of kedusha the entire time through. But the goal is this conduit. Now, if you build a pipe, you put a pipe in the wall to bring water. You go through this whole process, right, of building the pipe in, nice copper piping, the bearers and the sink and the whole thing is fantastic, right? But as somebody, I think in Harnaf they used to do this when they used to build the buildings here. The Arabs used to sabotage a lot of the construction by putting concrete in the pipes, to block it up. And to get that later on, the building's already up, it's a big problem, right? So it's like, what good is it if you can have the most fantastic, intricate system of bringing water, but there's a stima anywhere in the system or a partial stima, you can't get the water, or you just get a little bit of water. You go, wow, see this bearers over here. Cost me 200 shekels, or $200. It's like a gold here. The sink is like a marble sink. It's, turn it on. It just trickles out. Big deal, right? So Klal Yisrael is blocked. We're supposed to be a tzidor. We're supposed to be a conduit. We're supposed to open our mouth so Kodesh Baruch Hu can fill it with His word. But as we see from the base of Mikdash, the kedusha cannot go to places of tumah. So if you're going to live a life on any level, it's not all or nothing, according to the level that you're going to live on, as much tumah as you allow to come into your life, that's how much you block the light of Hashem. When Hashem says, widen yourself, He says, that I can I can fill your mouth with my word. He's saying, get rid of all the chumetz, even a mashahu, right? Make yourself a conduit, a vehicle through whom I can filter, my Torah, my light into the world, and metakin the entire Maisa Bereshis. That's what the pasuk means. That's the whole point of Maisa Bereshis. That's the whole point of Jesus Ryan. We don't have time right now. If you want, I mean, I said the Haggadah, right?
No, I think what you also said that I think when you talked about when the Leshem says that we were not on the 49th level of impurity, we were actually on the 49th level of Tahara.
No, 50th level at that point.
50th level.
Right.
We weren't at 50 because if we were 50, we would have lost the Bechira, I think. But
well, we did lose our Bechira temporarily.
We did,
until it was taken away from us. The night Leil Seder, we lost all Bechira. Right? And that's why the 4/5 were taken out in Makas Choshik, because if you hadn't chosen Geula by that time, basically, then there was no free choice to do it Makas Becharas, because of course Baruch himself is Mofia, his or into Maisa Bereshit to such a degree there was no denial. You couldn't, even Paro had to admit and go right into the streets looking for Moshe to say, go out, go, this is God doing it. Clearly, no one else can do this thing. Pray for me. So he says, pray for me that I should, I'm also Bechor. Right, so there was no Bechir, and then the Kosh Baruch by Chatzot, which is why they have to come in is by Chatzot, pulled the light away. And from Sesu Kochavim, and every year the same thing. From Sesu Kochavim until Chatzot, the light comes down for free, and the Haggadah, so what's the Haggadah doing then? So the whole point of the Haggadah...
You're talking about, Leil Seder, Sesu Kochavim, the stars come out, Sesu Kochavim until Chatzot.
Exactly. Every Leil Seder. The light comes down that came down on Mitzrayim that night, where there's no Bechira, right? And you actually, I mean, not to, to the extent that you are cleaned up of all your chumetz, is the extent of how much you can receive the light. The Mekublin, they asked the question, every other time of the year, if you want to have this light come to you, you must do something to bring it about. You have to be mamshich the light, the or to you. How do you do it? By mitzvahs, by the activities, Rosh Hashanah, you do simanim at the table, you daven, Yom Kippur, you fast, whatever. You're doing something to bring, if you don't do these activities, the light won't come to you. Leil Seder, it comes automatically. But Leil Seder is the one that we do everything. It's like hours upon hours of activities. So if what's the point of the Haggadah if not to draw the light to you? Just to make sure you're in the right place at the right time when the light comes down. But it's more than that. It's to make sure that when the light comes down, you're a fitting conduit. And that's why it begins with Seder, right? You sing the table of contents. I mean, it's going to be late, I'm sorry, but we don't have enough time before Pesach, but Seder, who sings the table of contents of everything? What's his emphasis on Seder for? Because Kosh Baruch Hu says, what's an Elokim? What did I do? The Rambam points out the first time it says V'yomer Elokim, it mentions Hashem spoke is by the creation of light. What is the point of light? To bring Seder to the world. That's what light does. Light allows you to make relationships and turn off the lights. You can't say it. It's all tovavohu. So Kosh Baruch Hu, the Ramban says that the first act of will, so to speak, expressed in the Torah is the creation of light, because a Kosh Baruch Hu Elokim is somebody who brings Seder to the world. So Kosh Baruch Hu says, I take you out of Mitzrayim to make Seder in the world. That's your whole. If you're not going to bring Seder, it goes back to Tohu all over again, right? So that's the reason why the Seder is so crucial in the actual. It's called Seder to remind us that's the reason I took you out of Mitzrayim. Kadesh. What's Kadesh? The Gemara says that the whole idea of Havdalah is in the Bracha Atachon L'Adam Da'as. Why? Because Havdalah, which is Kiddush, the same idea, is a function of the intellect. It's distinguishing, separating, seeing that this is one thing, this is a different idea. The Gemara has always been mechalik, in svaras and ideas and ideas, because the idea is to get to the bottom line of an idea. You cannot distinguish good from bad if you don't know the essence of a concept. You see, for example, the world connects to holiness. So what do they have? The Holy Crusades. It's an oxymoron. Totally, right? Holy Crusades. We're going to go across Europe, go to Eretz Israel, and kill every innocent person along the way who will not convert to Christianity. Right? It's like that's called holy. The concept of the word halu comes from the word holy because the idea of angels being holy. The world understands holiness, but they don't understand what it means. They don't understand the proper application. Is because they don't have the concept of tumah v'tahara. So the next mitzvah is orchatz, right? Washing, right? There's some base of mikdash because you couldn't touch food with with hands and all so you want to make sure the hands were tahor. The whole seder is geared to getting rid of the chumetz. Whatever you did until that point in time, physically, right? Even take at bir chumetz, you write down. Some people write down, their yitzaharas, they put in the fire and burn it too. Even if you don't write it down, but there's a little tefillah that says, it's just like this, my Yitzhahar, the Chumash is just a Yitzhahar. It's the ego, it's all things that Chazal say it. But what is it primarily? It's a stima. It's all the things that personally we have within ourselves that block us from being a conduit for the light of Hashem. So by Leil Seder, you've done it physically. But Leil Seder itself, you start doing it spiritually. Everything about the Seder is geared to cleaning you out. Not just spring cleaning, the full thing, the real beer chumash in the end. Because as the chumash leaves you from step to step in the Haggadah, the more the light can come and fill you. The more you become a conduit. And that's what Torah Shabbat Peh is all about. The Gemara in Gittin, and I think also in Erech says that because the whole bris was based upon Torah Shabbat Peh. The whole bris that Kodesh Baruch Hu made. Because that's the ultimate representation of a person's neshama, of a person's connection to the world of ruchnis, ruch mamalala, as Uncle calls it, right? It's the measure of how much soul there is in the person with respect to the body. That's the personality of a person. And speech defines it, reveals it. So therefore it's Pesach, the mouth that spoke. Because Baruch Hu calls it Yom, Chagam Matzos, because we eat matzah. That's how, it symbolizes what we're doing. From our perspective, it's Chag Pesach, right? Pesach, as the Maral points out, Pesach, the mouth that spoke. That's why the Jewish people, they leave Mitzrayim, they're fleeing from the Mitzrayim, right? They're in the Midbar. Parashat says Navuchim. They're confused. Why does he say that? Because he sees them, they come right back to Yam Suf all over again. They actually went past, they were on their way. They come back and they backtrack. Because if they're going to leave, they have to leave the proper way. So where do they leave from? A place called Pia Chiras, right? The mouth of freedom. Because that's what it's all about. Pesach is a time of year you free your mouth. You free your mouth. You free your mouth. You free the Jew. That's where a Jew's mouth is. That is where he is with respect to Cherus. And the whole Haggadah is set up in such a way to do exactly that. Moshe Rabbeinu can do it, but that's what we're trying to do. It's the time. Zaman Chersenu is the time we free the mouth. When you free the mouth, you undo the pera, which is paro. You accomplish what we're here to accomplish, and you become a conduit for the level of Kodesh Baruch Hu. There's nothing more fulfilling than that.